guys, Constance here. It's another Coffee Chat Wednesday. So today I thought I would actually tell you the story of our very first country home. Now, those of you who are maybe new to my channel might not know that my husband was active duty Army for 25 years, and so being a military family, we move around a lot. As a family, we had 18 different homes over the course of the years. That's a lot of moving, a lot of different places. We had all different kinds of homes, from our very first itty bitty little one-bedroom apartment in Newport News, Virginia, to a townhome military housing in Alaska, a high-rise apartment in Germany. And so we've kind of lived all over the place. But over the years, there's one particular place that forever will hold a spot in my heart, besides Alaska. And that is a place we refer to as the Farmhouse. We were stationed at Fort Bragg, and at the time that we found this house, we were actually living in a type of military housing. It was a leased housing where a developer had built an entire neighborhood, a subdivision of sorts, and then leased all of the housing to Fort Bragg. We ended up not living there very long. I think we were only there for about 9 months, because as soon as we moved in, we started realizing some of the issues with living there. Because it was leased housing, it wasn't military installation, it was off post, so the MPs had no jurisdiction. The civilian police who were there felt like because we were military, they shouldn't have to deal with us. And so it was kind of like a catch-22. For instance, we found out our next door neighbor was dealing drugs. There were break-ins. Someone a block away from me had someone try to come in through their window while they were home, knowing they were there. It was just one thing after another. So we ended up not living there very long. At the time, we knew that Jeff was actually getting ready to deploy to Iraq again, and he did not want to leave and have us living in this neighborhood. And it was a shame, because they were really nice houses. It's not very often that you have individual homes in military housing. Usually they're townhouse types of apartments and things like that. And so having our own yard, having a nice single home was kind of a luxury. And it had a really big kitchen with a giant walk-in pantry, so that was a perk too. But we weren't comfortable living there. Jeff wasn't comfortable leaving us there, and so it was time to start house hunting. Now, at the time, you know, we didn't make a lot of money. We were active duty military, and my husband wasn't very high ranking, and so funds were very limited, and moving is expensive. You got all those deposits and things like that. And so we were waiting for our tax return to come back, and we're starting to look around. So it had come time to house hunt, and I had been praying about it and said, Lord, you know, my dream home is, and I gave him a laundry list. I would love a nice front porch. I would love room for the kids to run and play and have space. I'd like to have a garden. I would like a nice big kitchen, and no neighbors would be amazing. Okay, so I had this whole laundry list of things. Well, a couple days later, I was using this particular website that I would run searches on, and I could put in my price range and things like that. And at the time, the rent limit that we were willing to spend was $800. So I got on there the next time to run a search, and here was this house. The rent had just been lowered to $795. So it was now in our price range, and we'd never laid eyes on this property before. You know, reading the description, it was a 5-bedroom farmhouse with 1 acre of land out in the country. And I was like, wow. But it was in a town we'd never heard of, little bitty town. And when I looked it up on a map, you know, it was like, wow, this looks like a great place, but the drive for Jeff to get to work in the morning would have been like an hour commute one way through downtown Fayetteville, North Carolina, gobs of traffic. It just looked like a nightmare. And Jeff was like, well, you know what? It doesn't hurt anything to go and look. Why don't you take Jennifer and drive on out and look at this house and see what you think? Well, we drive out to the house and we took the route that the map showed to get there, you know, taking the route through downtown and up and around. And we get there, and first of all, I noticed an interstate nearby, a brand new interstate. A new interstate that they had been building for quite some time, and it looked like it might actually be finished. So I was like, that's interesting. Let's go look at this house. So Jennifer and I went and looked at this house. It was a 100-year-old farmhouse, and it said on the listing that there was 1 acre. There was way more than 1 acre. I think maybe whoever put that information in for the listing just didn't want to intimidate people, so they just put an acre. We found out later there were 60 acres attached to this property, and we could tell at that point already that it had lots of land. Number one, we had space, room for the kids to run and play and everything else. Out back, there was a playhouse that had been built with electricity and everything. This beautiful little playhouse. It was a 5-bedroom house. It was huge. It was beautiful. It had so much country character. And around the front, a wraparound porch. Huge, beautiful wraparound porch. And the kicker, no neighbors. This house checked every box of the wish list I had given to God in prayer, and then some. It was amazing. So Jennifer and I, you know, we looked at this house and we just fell in love. But here's the catch. We were waiting on our tax return. We didn't have a lot of money to move. Moving is expensive. And so we were waiting to get our tax return so that we would have the funds to put in all the deposits and rent the U-Haul and all of that stuff. Well, it was going to be another week before we got our tax return. And here was this beautiful house that stole our hearts the second we laid eyes on it. So Jennifer and I held hands and we walked the property. We walked all the way around the house and we prayed over this house. We prayed like Abraham in Genesis chapter 13, I think it is, where God told Abraham to walk the land and claim it. We walked the land and we claimed that home and we asked for God to give it to us. So I went back to the house. I told Jeff all about it. I had taken photos and everything of it, and he was just as smitten as we were over this house. So we called the property manager, and the property manager told us all about the home, and everything was wonderful. And then the ball dropped. There was another family who wanted this home, and they had already been in to fill out an application, but they weren't yet ready to sign a lease. They were waiting for a couple of days. They were supposed to come in on Friday, possibly to sign that lease. And the lady said, "Ma'am, you're more than welcome to come on and sign a lease, but I can't promise you anything." The people were supposed to be coming in on Friday. We weren't supposed to get our tax return until the following week. So I prayed. I said, "Lord, this is everything we've dreamed of. This is all we wanted and more. Please don't let us lose this opportunity. Please let us be able to get this home." And then something amazing happened. Our tax return came early. Days early. So we ran on down to the property manager's office. We filled out an application. We were approved on the spot, and the house was ours. That was amazing. It was absolutely answered prayers. And you know, when you move a lot, you move into a new home, it takes a little while for that house to feel like your home. There's a little bit of an adjustment period, and things feel awkward at first. It feels like a strange location. Not with this place. This place felt like home the second I walked through the door. We loved it, absolutely loved it. And we felt such a peace living there. We ended up getting chickens not long after that. We had a garden, and it was heaven. It was absolute heaven. So we knew after living there that it was exactly the kind of lifestyle that we wanted to have after retirement from the Army came. And so that was where we had set our sights on homesteading all those years ago. Then there was something really cool that happened shortly after we moved in. I really wondered about the people who had built the home, because this was a beautiful farmhouse. It had to have some sort of history. What was the story behind this house? Well, a couple months after we moved in, I was in the kitchen one day when this car came around, the driveway looped around, came in behind the back of the house and pulled up near the kitchen where there was a carport. And this car came up the driveway and it came up near the carport and parked. So I went out onto the porch to see who it was, and it was this little old man. It was a black man, and he was so elderly he could barely stand up. He continued to lean on the door of the car. And I went out to talk to him, and he was telling me how he used to live there. He said that the family who built the house, who owned that house, were good folks, he said. So he told me how the old building that was on the property used to be the area vegetable stand, the farmer's market of sorts, and people would come all around to buy vegetables there. And there was a little room in the back, and how the family who owned the farm allowed him to sleep in there, and they took him in. And it was so interesting because back then, you know, it wasn't really the acceptable thing for a white family to take in, you know, a young black kid like that, and yet this family did. And he said to me that he come from bad folk, and that the family who took him in gave him an opportunity to get away from whatever bad thing was in his life. And it was just the neatest thing. And he told me that people that he used to know would say things to him like, what does he want with them white folk? But those white folk cared for him. And it was just the neatest thing to know that the family who built the farmhouse that I now called home were good people with big hearts. And you know, I chatted with him for a little bit longer, and then he drove on home. Well, not long after that, I opened up the newspaper one day, and there was a picture of this sweet old man on the cover. He was living in an assisted living home, and every single day he would walk down the hallway and have lunch with this little old lady, a little old white lady, who had no idea who he was anymore, but he knew who she was. She was the daughter of the family who took him in. And so even though her mind was gone and she didn't know who he was, he had lunch with her every single day. It was the most heartwarming thing that this farmhouse that we now called home, a place that had already given us such a sense of peace, had such a wonderful history of love and caring for other people. I miss that place. I mean, it really has a little piece of my heart still. I don't know if the house still exists. Shortly after we had moved into that place, we actually met the owner of the home, and he had plans to purchase land elsewhere and actually move the farmhouse because it was his family's property, his family's farmhouse, and he didn't want it being zoned commercially and being lost. And so I don't know if it's still there, but the history and everything that goes with it, I'm sure will live on no matter where it's at. But so that is the story of our beloved farmhouse and our first home out in the country, and that's what really set us down this path of knowing what kind of lifestyle we wanted to live when it came to life after the military. I hope you enjoyed this little story, this little trip down memory lane with me, and I will talk to y'all next time. Thanks for watching.